Welcome to the Dad Nation Podcast, the place where high-performing men are empowered to reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness while enhancing their career success. You see, in a world full of noise, burnout, and mediocrity, we believe what's missing is courageous and compassionate leadership in the home, because when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. You see, this isn't just a podcast. It's a movement for men who refuse to settle for less in their families, in their focus, and their future. We are curse breakers and we are legacy makers. I am your host, Mitchell Osmond, and I'm honored that you've chosen to invest your most valuable asset, which is your time, with me today. Now let's get into it. Welcome, my friend, to the Dad Nation Podcast. I'm so excited that you're here joining us today and you're listening. I'm also excited about this podcast for selfish reasons. You're going to understand why just in a little moment. But today we are talking with Sarah Trott, and she is creator and host of the Fourth Trimester Podcast. She created the show, this podcast, after realizing that many of the questions she had about her own experience as a new parent were actually the same questions her postpartum doula were asking some 30 years prior, right? And so she's passionate about helping others find the resources and the confidence they need on their parenting journey. She's also the founder of the Hello Gaia Parenting Co-Pilot, which is a tool providing evidence-based support for families, offering fast, reliable answers from pregnancy to parenting anytime. Hello Gaia draws upon trusted sources such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, the March of Dimes, the U.S. Centers for Disease Controls and Prevention, plus a bunch of other credentialed and experienced professionals. Sarah also works in tech as a startup advisor. She loves spending time with her husband and 3 daughters in the San Francisco Bay Area. Sarah, thank you so much for being here on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Mitchell. I'm really excited to be here. I've had you as a guest on my program. And so here we are now on Dad Nation. And I love your show. So this is wonderful.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking forward. Before we hit record, I was like, Sarah, we gotta stop talking and just get into the episode because I have so many questions for you. You'll know, hopefully, if you're listening, you'll know why this episode has selfish motivation. I am a relatively new father, and my wife is pregnant, and so I had a lot of questions going into this just 3 years ago. She had a lot of questions. We were both confused. And actually, you know what's interesting? Didn't plan to talk about this, but even in the medical world, we would ask opinions from professionals and they would have different advice. So for example, if it was a lactation expert or whatever, one would tell us one thing and the other one would tell us the other thing. We're so confused. It was actually so frustrating because we're like, what's the right thing? Anyways, so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today, Sarah, but I'd love to know like a little bit of your story. Like when you were growing up, little girl Sarah, did she dream about being, a podcaster and talking about the fourth trimester, or like who was a little bit about you and how'd you get into this?
Yeah, thank you. No, I know, to your point, there are even books. You can read any book and you'll find for every book that says one thing, you'll find one that says another. Yeah. So that's a really common experience, actually. So my story, I got into the Fourth Trimester Podcast world, like many people do with their stories, is through personal experience. I became a parent and I realized that all these questions that I had, they're the same questions that parents have been asking for decades. And I just realized there's an opportunity here to have thoughtful conversations with perinatal professionals, record the conversations, and share the information with others who might benefit. Because for me, a lot of these conversations were personal research. I was curious about something, or there was something top of mind for me because of stuff I was going through with my own family. And because I was working with a very experienced postpartum doula, which I'm going to pause here for a second and just explain. The word doula, not everybody knows what that is. Doula just means they're a non-medical professional, but they're there to help support a family during the perinatal period with practical help, social and emotional support, and to really help give parents the resources and confidence they need if they do need additional support. So they usually they're like huge Rolodexes of, you mentioned lactation consultants, but like sleep consultants, medical professionals, for you name it, overnight support, whatever someone might need. They usually are connected to lots and lots of other people, and they can say, hey, have you ever considered XYZ? And that's very valuable because a lot of parents don't even know what exists or what's out there or what support is out there. So anyway, I was working with a very experienced postpartum doula who had lots of resources. And so she was able to tap into her network so that when we wanted to have a conversation with someone who spent their life and has a PhD in healthy family sleep, for example, we could reach out to that person, have them on the program, ask a lot of questions, and share that information out with others.
Yeah. Love that. And it's it's so interesting. I mean, you're talking to men, right? In this podcast, I mean, 90% of the guys or people listening are men. The other ones are very keen wives who are listening because they want insights. But this is something that was not on our radar typically as men until we're in the thick of it. And it's like, oh, there's a thing. Like, that's actually a lactation consultant is actually a thing, and sleep consultants, like all these different things. And you're like, oh, now I realize how much I don't know, and it can be so overwhelming and so exhausting, not to mention all the other things that are going on at the same time that are exhausting. So I love what you do. I think it's so important. I was so thrilled to be on your show to give some insight to your listeners on the inverse of what we're going to talk about today. But let's set the tone and sort of like lay out the proverbial blanket, if you will. What exactly is the fourth trimester, and why is this such an important time?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you flagging again that your audience of men here are learning some of this stuff for the first time. But don't worry, men. It's everybody learning this for the first time.
Yeah.
Most cases, this is like a human experience for when becoming a parent. It's this huge transition period of learning about what it's like to have a baby and be in a partnership with someone and having a baby if you have a partner, right? But also learning about oneself, because there's a lot of identity change that happens when someone's becoming a parent. But specifically to answer the question, what is the fourth trimester? It's a fun name for the show. It's a fun name. It's a fun way to talk about this period immediately after birth. So people typically will talk about a pregnancy of the first, second, and third trimesters. This fourth trimester, it's this idea that, hey, you've had your baby's out on the other side, but you're very much in a delicate time of recovery, of change, like I mentioned, of your identity, of learning how to relate to a partner in a new way, learning how to relate to this new human, this child, in a new way. And almost everything that you do day to day at home is a little bit different, or maybe a lot different. And so it's this first few months after birth, but some people, will say, well, this fourth trimester, it's not even 3 months, right? You talk about the word postpartum. So again, I'm going to pause. Postpartum just literally means the period after birth. Sometimes people think it means postpartum depression, which that is a thing, but that just means there's like a perinatal mental mood disorder that happens during that post-birth period, right? That's why it's called postpartum depression rather than just depression.
Yeah.
So that's what postpartum means, but postpartum is kind of forever. Once you have a kid, once you have a baby, you're always a parent. That continues on.
I never really thought about it like that before.
Yeah. So you have this baby who's learning how to be a human out in the world, and you have parents learning how to reinvent their day-to-day with this new identity and these radically different routines. And so it's this great time of bonding and healing and adjustment. And oftentimes it's like the most intense period But also, unfortunately, and a lot of the stories I've heard, it can also be some of the least supported times.
Yeah. I have so many friends right now who have pregnant wives or wives who are postpartum or in their fourth trimester, as you define it. And so I think this episode is going to be so impactful for many people. A lot of my clients, who come to me who are in a difficult place in their marriage. Some of them are, it's postpartum. It's like everything is different now. My wife is different. Our lives are different. There's this kid in the middle of us, all those different things. And so this is a very real struggle that people go through. It doesn't have to be a struggle, but it can be for certainly. I mean, it was for me and my wife, and we did a lot of preparation. I say air quotes because you can prepare as much as you want, and then there's what actually happens. But what I got a question for you, just to get into it. When you think about the fourth trimester, that time after the baby comes into the world, what do most men misunderstand about this season? If you could put your man hat on for a moment, and why does that misunderstanding cause so much tension in marriages in those first few months?
Well, I would say it's often simplified down to missed expectations or differing expectations about what it will be like once baby arrives. And so this is where, and you kind of hit on it with your air quotes preparation comment there, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can prepare all you like and plan all you like, but the mentality that's so critical is flexibility, actually, and contingency, actually, because if things don't go the way you've planned necessarily, which most likely they won't, it's nice to be prepared with alternative ideas in your head, like you've already considered, like it might not go the perfect way you want it to. So it's different from what one person might think, but also if you haven't articulated what that fourth trimester might look like and feel like for you and your partner, if you haven't articulated your imaginations of this scenario with your partner, with your wife, with your girlfriend, with your partner, right? Then they might have a completely different idea. So everything might be going great for one person, but absolutely not great for the other because they have this totally different idea of what they wanted it to be like. Mm-hmm. And so that's why critically there's this opportunity to communicate early, right? And think about how do we want to talk about this beforehand so that we can be proactive in creating the experience that we want. And ideally bond through the experience and become closer through the experience.
Yeah. A lot of the listeners to the show, this show will know that I'm pretty open and forthcoming about all the mistakes I've made, over the years in my marriage. But I would say that is one thing that we did well, when my wife was pregnant and the moments, the weeks leading up, we had a ton of conversation about what that was going to look like. And, I just said, hey, I'm throwing any expectation out the window. I'm talking expectations of everything about what your mood is going to be like, what my, what our quality time is going to look like, what intimacy is going to look like, fill in the blank with whatever expectation you might have. And I'm just like, I'm putting all that on pause for a moment, because for me in that moment, I was like, all of her attention is going to be on this kid, this baby, and that's by design, and that's important, right? And so my role here, and I don't want to put words or answers in your mouth because I'm going to ask you about this, and perhaps you can tell me if I was wrong. But my whole approach was, I'm here to serve my wife and lead, like I'll come alongside her and support her any way that I can as she recovers, as she heals, as she processes through this fundamental change, not just physically, but psychologically. And so I was like, hey, what can I do? How can I support you? How can I serve you? How can I, and for me, it was like, hey, for this next few, however many weeks, months, whatever she's comfortable with, this is the focus, and yeah, it'll come back. But right now, that's not the point, And so for me, that was actually, it was a bonding time for us. And it was a beautiful thing, because so many other times when big things came up in our marriage, they often would pull us apart, and so it was a beautiful thing. And I agree with you 100%. It's an opportunity to grow together. It doesn't have to be something that is difficult, right? On that note, I'd love to ask you, because obviously you're an expert in this area. You live and breathe it. You talk to experts all day, every day. What are some of the most common, maybe, missteps or mistakes fathers make in those first 1 to 3 years, even if they're well-intentioned, just so guys listen and know maybe what not to do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you for sharing, by the way, and kudos for being proactive and having those conversations with your wife. That's amazing. And also there's no right or wrong answer to that stuff. It's what's right for you and your family.
Yeah.
So nice. Common pitfalls. I've talked to some fathers on my program who have shared their experiences and stories. And there tends to be sometimes the expectation or idea that babies are the woman's job. So men, there's some archetypal, like stereotypical role ideas here that come to play, like historical ideas that come to play. And you're like, well, this is the man section of life and this is the woman section, and the, baby is woman section. So I'm just going to back off and give her space. And then, that's her thing. But men listening, you have a role to play here. You are just as much a parent to that baby as the mom. You created that baby together. And this is why having that conversation around expectations up front is so important, because this is such an incredible opportunity to be present for your wife and be present for your baby and bond with your baby, get that skin to skin. That's something that we talked about when you were on my program. It's so valuable, but I think that the pitfall I'm highlighting is just assuming that it's like not your place. Like, you have permission to be a parent and to be there and be involved and be hands-on. You can change a diaper. You can fluff a pillow. You can help change. You can do all these things and be involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's because there might be an embedded narrative that they might have. And they say, well, that's not my job. So there's a lack of ownership. But I think in some situations, it's also just like a fear of, like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to hurt the baby. I don't want to do the wrong thing. It's all a very sensitive time. So it's easier for me to back away, and out of fear, they kind of step away. But I love that you said that, because I think it's such a great opportunity for us as men to step in. And there are things that you're not going to be able to do, like breastfeed, obviously. But what else can you do? You can change a diaper, you can take out the trash. You can fluff the pillow. You can go get the baby. You can, whatever. You can do so many other things. So I love that. And don't feel like you're a very gracious, kind woman, but don't feel like you have to candy coat anything. I on the podcast, all my listeners, will know it's very much like hey, here's how it is. This is this is how the cookie crumbles, so they say. So feel free to just speak candidly to all of our brothers listening. So another quick question for you. When you talk about, the fourth trimester, and, I've heard you mention that preparation isn't just diapers and sleep schedules. There's a lot more than that. What should couples be preparing for emotionally and relationally? So say, for example, a man who's listening to, one of my buddies whose wife is like, I don't know, she's like 8 months. She's 8 months pregnant. And so he's about to go into this season. what are a couple things that they should be preparing for emotionally and relationally? Does that make sense? Hey, brother, let me ask you something. And I want you to really think about this. Are you winning at work, but quietly kind of losing ground at home? Maybe you're the guy people rely on. You stay calm in meetings. You carry that pressure all day. And you kind of wear that like a badge of honor. But maybe when you walk through the front door at home, your wife feels distant. Conversations feel shorter. And instead of being excited to come home, maybe work feels easier. Nothing is broken, but something is slowly drifting. And if you're telling yourself right now, I'm going to fix this when things slow down, or I'm going to fix this when things get easier, if you're honest with yourself, you already know they won't slow down. They won't get easier. Well, the high performance husband is for men who are done coasting. It's for men who want to win at home like they win at work. You see, this isn't therapy. It's not about fixing your wife. It's not for men who want quick hacks. It's for men who want to be calm under pressure, strong in their body, clear in their thinking, and to become the man that your wife and kids look up to with pride. So if you're listening to this and you know that what got you here won't get you where you want to go, I want you to go to dadnationco.com/accelerator or click the link in the show notes below, and then you can apply to join this accelerator and join myself and many other like-minded men who are leveling up in their home, in their health, and their happiness. They're winning all year long. It's a 12-month mentorship. It's going to change your life. All right, now let's jump back into the episode. What are a couple things that they should be preparing for emotionally and relationally? Does that make sense?
Yes, I love this question. Well, first off, just a little caveat. You're not going to be able to learn everything, right? Because you can't, I do think it's possible to like overdo it. Like, I don't know, I like to read books. My collection of perinatal books is quite extensive because I like to geek out on this stuff. But what I would say is I do have some practical recommendations. I think just at a really high level, some things for a successful fourth trimester, if you just want to start getting into the mindset here, is be in the mindset of be willing to accept help. Prepare to just focus on rest and nourishment and support, but not perfection. Right. So, and then the other kind of high level point I would make on this is, and then we'll dive into the details, would be like, don't just sit back and leave it to fate, right? Like we talked about at the top, like this is an opportunity to be really proactive and design an experience you want. And so I can talk a little bit practically about what that could look like if you want.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I think there are three main considerations. I think the first one is really communicate and put a plan together as a team. And that team would be you and your partner. And if you have someone who's going to be with other people who are with you at the birth or immediately after the birth, it's very valuable to also share your plan and your expectations with them so that everyone's on the same page. There is a lot of value in having a birth plan. That's not exactly what I'm talking about, but a birth plan is a component of this. So if you're having a hospital birth, which is like most like 98%-ish of all births in the United States here are hospital births. Like they're probably going to give you a little printout of like 3 pages where you like check boxes and things. Great. But I want you to go a lot deeper than that. I want you to sit down, get out your pen and paper, and do a little exercise, like use your imagination. Think about like what you want it to look and feel like. And there's some specific questions that I really like. I'm going to reference a prior episode I've had on my program with the writers of a book called The First 40 Days, which is a really excellent book and resource. The Essential Art of Nourishing the New Mother. They recommend 4 questions. How will we divvy up baby carrying responsibilities? How will our finances be influenced by baby's arrival? And that includes the time, if any, that the mom is going to be taking off from work and any professionals that you're bringing in to help. So major considerations. How will our sex life be affected by the addition of a newborn? How will our social lives change once baby is here?
Yeah.
Those right there, like those are all big conversations. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of work that goes into having thoughtful conversations around each of those topics. We also have on the Fourth Trimester website, if you go there, there's a free download you can get, which has a writing exercise. It's designed to be, it's a set of questions, and it's designed to be something you can do on your own. And then as partners come together and share your answers and have a discussion about it. And it's a little bit different from those questions. So I like both. That's why I'm mentioning both.
Yeah.
And really, why are you doing this? Part of it is sharing expectations. That big, important topic, right? To make sure you're on the same page. Also education, right? You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn about the realities of your own situation and then what the other person wants and needs. And then, of course, when you go into the practicalities of like birth planning, you're going to start learning about new medical terms you've probably never heard about, which is, I highly, highly recommend becoming, you don't have to go out and get a doctorate, but like be familiar with some of those medical terms so that when you're in the delivery room or if you're having a home birth with a midwife, that if certain things start to happen and different things are presented to you from a medical standpoint, you know what your rights are. You know how to ask questions, right? Like, is this medically necessary? If you remember anything from this whole conversation, people, remember that when you're in the delivery room, you have the right to ask the question. If someone's telling you that you have to do something, you have to take a drug, or you have to do some kind of intervention during labor, say, is this medically necessary? So valuable. Right? Or another way of putting it is, what would happen if we don't do this thing? So I've gone down a rabbit hole here, so we're going to bring it back.
No, it's good. It's good.
We're going to bring it back. And then another reason why you want to communicate and plan is because it's exciting. You get to share in the excitement of it. You get to bond. You get to, again, like when you think about coming together as a couple, it's a lot of the combination of like hopes and dreams that are being melded together. And so this is like another one of those really cool conversations that you get to share.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Love that. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That's so much in line with our situation too. I mean, my wife labored for like 36 hours, I think it was. It was kind of and then we ended up in an emergency C-section, and it was wild. But communicating with the doctors, I mean, my wife is a healthcare professional, so she was very familiar with that environment, and she advocated for herself. She had no problem with that. But I was thinking as I was watching it all happen, I'm like, wow, I'm sure glad that she's aware and can advocate, for us and for baby. But a lot of people may not feel like they're in that position. So thank you for saying that. That was true for us. You talk about plans, and I got to share the story because one of my friends was telling me about this like a couple of years ago when my wife was pregnant the first time. And he was like, he's very much he's an engineer, very thoughtful, very highly strategic, highly calculated. So him and his wife had this whole plan. He had a binder, right? These are the things that we're going to do. And this is how labor is going to go. And so anyways, she went into labor way sooner than they were expecting. And it all happened way faster than they were expecting. So they're rushing to the hospital, and they get into, the room. And he grabs out this binder, and he's like trying to get the attention of the nurse. And he's like, hey, this is our birth plan. So he's like opening the binder, and he's like, this is what's supposed to happen next. And he's trying to walk her through this. And she just looks at him and grabs the binder and like legit throws it in the trash. And she's like, put on a gown. You're about to have a baby. I don't care what your plan is. It was so funny. And he told me that story, and I laughed so hard. And he was just trying to say like, hey man, you might have expectations, because I'm like that too. I'm very calculated, very strategic. He's like, you might have expectations, but you know what? Just throw it out the window, because you know what? It's probably not going to look like what you thought it was. And surprise, surprise, it looked nothing like what I thought it was going to look like. Right. So love that. Did have a question for you about identity shifts in women, right? How does identity shifts like that happen for a woman, when she becomes a mother? What do you wish that more men understood about that transition and that time? In your experience walking with women and talking about this, what do you wish more men would understand about actually what happens? And maybe you can shed some light on exactly what does happen, because a lot of men don't even realize that there are some significant shifts that happen in her.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am not a medical professional, so you can reference
Great disclaimer.
a medical a medical source for this. But at a really high level, there are massive hormonal shifts that are happening. There are also mental load shifts. So it's like brain chemistry changes where the attention and the brain, it becomes so focused on caring for baby and the immediacy around that. So like the combination of sleep deprivation, just very typical. Like just to, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I want to learn more about what it might be like to have a baby. Babies wake up every couple of hours to feed when they're infants. That's normal. That's normal. Babies don't sleep through the night for years often, right? And that's normal. That's healthy. It's based on like the development of the baby. But for mom, there's like this cycle of constant interruption, of hormonal shift, of a huge amount of energy it takes to breastfeed. It's an enormous amount of calories that is required to produce breast milk. So she needs to eat a lot, probably a lot more than you've ever seen her eat. You're going to be like, wow, you're eating so much. And it's like, yes. So don't ask your wife if she's hungry. Every couple hours, whenever she's feeding, present a snack. Here's a little snack tray. I have recommendations for snack trays on my website. Go check it out if you need inspiration, but it's super simple. It's like healthy fats, It's like stuff like you can talk to a nutritionist. My list was made in partnership with people who have expertise in this area. But, it's like dried fruit and some mixed nuts and some cheese and a deviled egg or whatever you've got handy. So it's not empty carbs. It's scrambled eggs, it's oatmeal. Just give your wife some food and feed her, because she is doing so much work in her body to take care of this baby and produce milk. So this might be a big shift that you're like, wow, she's like, it almost seems like she's someone else. And the truth is she is. She is, because she's being taxed mentally and physically in a way that she never has before. And you have the opportunity to be there for her and experience all of this yourself. And also, we talked earlier about pitfalls or things that men might fall into during this time. I want to mention that actually, there is all this attention on mom and baby, which is a huge shift and a real necessary shift. But also don't forget about yourself. Don't forget about your own self-care. Men get postpartum depression and anxiety too.
Yep.
It's actually not totally uncommon. It's like, I'm going to look at my stats. So 8 to 13% of men. That's, 1 in 10-ish. So, pay attention to how you're feeling and your self-care too. I think it's really important. So I want to make sure I mention that part.
Yeah. I talk with a lot of men who wrestle in that piece because there is a shift. And and I'm going to go in here because you mentioned it, but men, there's a dynamic shift. There's a shift in our values, and now there's a huge priority in this relationship that wasn't there, 6 months before. And men can really wrestle with loneliness, they can really crave affection. And I'm not talking about like sex. I'm just talking about literally just affection, like even just acknowledgement or any of those things, because they were used to this relational intimacy, not just physically, but emotionally, all those things. And now all of a sudden there's a big thing that's the priority. And so a lot, in marriages, resentment comes up often, where a husband can grow to feel resentful because of what he's lost, or the wife, my experience in talking with coaching men and hearing from their wives, the resentment that they can have of things that were lost. And so this happens so often, to which, I'll usually encourage men to have conversations through that and advocate for your needs and your desires as your wife. Hold space for her to advocate for her needs and desires. And communication is so key in these pivotal moments to understand, so we don't lose ourselves and lose the relationship in the middle of this beautiful season, we're going through. And, on that note, I do want to ask this question, as I'm curious of what you think. And a lot of different people have different thoughts, and I have my own thoughts. But the big question so many guys ask, right after the baby comes is, when can we have sex again? You know what I mean? That's like the big, when can we be intimate? What is it going to look like? Is it, and I've been talking, I've coached guys who are they're coming to me and they're saying, hey, is it 4 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? Is it, one guy was like, hey, is it 2 weeks? Do I have to wait 2 weeks? I'm like, bro, slow your roll. But, as you think about it, as a mom, yourself, and as someone who has, obviously, again, thought about this extensively, in your experience, how should a man approach that conversation with his, wife who's just become a mom, who has, some desires and wants, again, not just physical intimacy, but everything that comes with that. How does he have that conversation with his wife or partner? Quick pause here, brother, because if your marriage feels flat, the intimacy is rare, conversations are turning tense, or deep down, you're just worried that maybe you're slowly becoming roommates, I see you. So listen in for a moment. Most marriages don't drift because guys stop caring. They just run out of energy, ideas, and clarity. And that's exactly why I created the Spark Starter Kit, which is your romance on autopilot for an entire year. It's a done-for-you system that removes all the pressure and the guessing. All right, it's 365 pre-written text messages for every situation, so you never have to stress about what to say. Just copy, paste, personalize, and watch your eyes light up. It's 52 date night blueprints, one pre-planned date for every week of the year. So all you have to do is show up and be the hero. There's 100 conversation starters that are designed to engage her and turn up the heat, so you never have to worry about the conversation getting dull or boring. And it also includes the Romance Reset, which is a 3-part mini course, which is strategically designed to take you from bored roommates to passionate soulmates. So what's the result? More intimacy, less tension. More passion, less thinking. You'll be able to meet her every need without ever having to even think about it. So if you want to get the fire back in your marriage, grab the Spark Starter Kit, okay? The link is in the show notes below. All right, now let's get back to the episode. How does he have that conversation with his wife or partner?
What a good question. First of all, you sort of answered it in your question, which is have a conversation, right? Like, again, don't just say, oh, well, it's been 6 weeks, so hi, it just, there's a misconception that the 6-week checkup, which is a typical time frame for when you see the doctor after having a baby, is the green light, is the okay. There's a lot more that goes into that checkup, by the way. It's not just a yay, nay on physical intimacy again. I've had whole episodes dedicated to that with OBGYNs. Actually, it's kind of fascinating. Cool. And also, do you know 40% of those checkups are missed because people are back at work already and all kinds of reasons? Please go to your 6-week checkup. There's so much that value that you get as a human who just had a baby from those. And arguably, plenty of people think it should be sooner. Anyway, have the conversation beforehand, ideally, maybe even before baby arrives, about what you both think that could and what you might want it to look like. Intimacy can mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean physical. If you want to link to it, I have an episode where I have a PhD psychiatrist talking about intimacy and what that looks like. And she's full of stories, having coached lots of parents, men and women, through this very thing, actually. But yeah, have the conversation. It's different and unique for everybody. Like this question of is it some number of weeks? It's kind of a misnomer because there's so many permutations of what can happen physically and mentally and emotionally with this change that what's right for one human is going to be very different for another. So it's my answer. My short answer is that it's a very personal and individualized answer.
Yeah, totally. And I was going to bring up that whole 6-week thing too, because that's a bit of a benchmark that people see and guys, and maybe they're being oblivious or ignorance or whatever, just like, oh, well, that's 6 weeks, so that means we're good. They say, and I'm quick to tell them that number means almost nothing when it comes to what we're talking about, because there's not just the physical, healing and recovery, but there's just what's going on emotionally, hormonally, how she feels about her body and all the changes. And she probably doesn't feel super sexy at that time, and it's like, you have to respect where she's at, and so I'll usually just say it's, why don't you ask her? Don't ask me, right? Have the conversation with your wife and respect it, have that mutual respect.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you for going there with me. Appreciate it. Because it is an important thing to talk about.
Of course.
Okay. So a lot of listeners are career driven, some might call them high performers, entrepreneurs, business leaders, etc. What role does presence play in the fourth trimester? Meaning, like, how can busy men who are very career driven, pride themselves in that, how can they practice presence when they already feel pretty stretched thin? Because like you mentioned, financial pressures, increased expenses, maybe the wife isn't working right now but she was working before, all those different things. There's a lot of pressures men can feel. How can these men practice being more present with their wives? Is that a difficult question for you to answer, or maybe you can give some tips on that?
Yeah. When you say presence, it makes me think about the feeling of presence. So when you're with somebody, you can tell if they're not paying attention. You can tell if they're distracted. You can tell if they're, certainly, obviously, put your phone down.
Well, I didn't know that you could just say obviously, because to a lot of people, that's not that obvious anymore, unfortunately. But yes.
Well, then I will say it, put your phone down. Leave your phone in the other room. If you've been at work all day and you're tired and your wife's been probably up and down for like days on end, fairly sleepless, taking care of an infant, and you come home, the way that you're used to interacting before is going to maybe feel really different. And so presence can just look like being open and vulnerable, getting in tune with yourself and like your own self-trust, and saying, like, just being real with that person. Maybe just hold hands and look at each other and say, I'm having a hard time, or this was a hard day, or I'm really tired. And how are you? And look in their eyes and just check in, give some support. I mean, that creating psychological safety at home is huge. And part of that is having those real conversations and touch points. And maybe you have other kids running around the house, and maybe the realities of life are that you don't have a lot of quality time like that. But even if you get just a little bit of it, those touch points really last, right? Because like, I got some hand holding, some physical touch. I got the eye contact. We talked about how we're feeling. We were honest. We asked for what we needed from each other. Like, that can go a really long way.
Yeah. Well, and I think so many men think it's quality, and I would say it's not always, or so many men think it's quantity. Like, I'm going to have to sit down and talk about this for 2 hours. It's like, no, it's quality. It's like, it's amazing what can happen in 20 minutes of real undistracted attention and affection and presence, versus 2 hours of being in the same room but scrolling on your phone the whole time. Right. And this is a principle that applies in the rest of your life and marriage as well. But I'll often just say, hey, man, be where your feet are. You know what I mean? If you're at work, if your feet are at work in the office, be there. If you come home and your feet are in the nursery, be there. If your feet are, hanging over the bed in your room talking with your wife, be there. Don't be anywhere else. Right. And if you just put your attention on that, be where my feet are, then that can get you a long way. Right. I had something else I was going to say, and I can't remember.
Well, while you remember it,
yes.
Like, one small thing that I'll pass along, that someone shared with me, talking about intimacy, is like, sometimes it's just like, if you're passing each other in the hallway or something, you could just hold your hand or touch the shoulder and just say, I appreciate you, and look at them, or just stop and have a hug and say, I just really need a hug right now. And then you can go on folding the laundry or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, totally. It's the linger. And I've talked to my clients about this. If you normally look for, 1 second, look for 1.5 seconds. Eye contact for 2 seconds. If you normally hug for 3 seconds, hug for 7 seconds. You know what I mean? It's it's the shoulder touch or the hand hold or the rub, stroke on the back, as you pass through the hallway, or the thank yous, all those different things. It's like lingering a moment to let her know you're really there. You really care and you see her, right? That's so, so, so huge. One practice that I'll share, and I know I'm talking a lot. I'm not the expert here, just for the record. She is. But as a man who has recently gone through this and is about to go through it again, one thing that we got into the habit of doing was like, I'd come home and we'd have that conversation. Where are you at? 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 2 out of 10, right? Now, Brown talks a lot about this. I'm like, okay, well, she's at a 3 out of 10. And I'm actually a 7 out of 10. I got about 70% in me. So we can cover it. It's 100%, right? I might come home and she's like, yeah, I'm rocking like 70%. And I'm like, man, I'm bagged. I had a terrible day. I'm like, 30%, 40%, whatever. She's, stepping into that. But there's some days where I'll come home. She's like, I'm at 30%. I'm like, I'm at a 40. That's all I got in my tank, right? That equals, for you math whizzes, 70%. We don't have it in us to function normally like we normally would. And we both recognize, hey, we're not totally like our 100%. So what can we change? Maybe we're going to order in pizza. Maybe we're going to do some takeout. Maybe we're going to do something simple. What can we simplify tonight, just to be easier on ourselves? Because combined, we're not at 100%, and having that transparency and having that conversation was so helpful for us, because number one, it said, hey, I care about where you are and I see you. You get a chance to share where you're at. But then number two, it helps bring in the sense of camaraderie of like, hey, we're in this together. And we're actually comparing our energies and saying, how do we need to move forward? How do we need to adjust our evening to accommodate for this? Does that make sense?
Yes, it surely does. I really like that. And talking about being like low percent, that's, sometimes the reality of
Totally.
of changing into this new world. And I do want to emphasize that, in the fourth trimester, you have this opportunity to not do it alone. A lot of people might think that there's something they have to prove to like tough it through and do it all themselves, but no, you don't. And the long human history that we have on this planet, like we lived in different kinds of communities where people would naturally come in and support. And in our modern day structure, that just isn't typical. Like our parents live in a different city. We don't necessarily know all our neighbors, or maybe we're new to a community and don't have a lot of close friends yet. But realize that you can tap in on professionals and family and friends. Maybe it's a church relationship or some other community that you're trusted with, and you can think of practical ways. If people say, "Oh, I'd love to help," it's not necessarily a throwaway offer. Like, definitely don't think it's a weakness to accept help. If people offer it, if people want to bring you a meal, or if you're like, wow, no, we have like a freezer full of food, but my poor dog hasn't been walked in a week. Would you be willing to help me walk my dog?
Yep.
Or would you be willing to come over for an hour and just help me with whatever it is? Help me hang out with my younger kids who are just going bananas, or if it's someone you like a family member, someone you really trust, can you take my kids to the playground for a couple hours and I can sleep, or something like that? So it's just not a weakness. So when you're in those depleted moments and you're thinking like, what can I shift? You're not alone is my answer.
And anyone who has kids knows exactly how that feels. It's so funny. I think about a situation we were in before we had kids. We went to a friend's house and we were just visiting to say, to meet the new baby. And we had no idea. And I just started unloading her dishwasher. I had no idea why I did that. I just did it. And Sam, my wife, was there, and we were putting away the dishes. We weren't even that great of friends. It was just something instinctually we just did. And then she messaged like a week later, and she was like, you have no idea how much it meant to me that you would just do that. And we didn't need a gift card. We didn't need a lasagna. I just needed someone to unload the dishwasher. It was like, what? Blew our minds. now we totally get it. Now that we're parents, like, yeah, that's the practical thing. Hey, can you walk the dog? Oh my goodness. It's amazing. So yeah, I love that. I have 3 questions. One's going to be super quick and the other 2 can be as quick as you want them to be, but I want to be conscious of our time because I know we only have a few minutes left. I want you to, for a moment, just to look back on your own experience, in these early seasons of becoming a new mom. What did you need most from your partner at that time that maybe wasn't so obvious in that moment, but now as you look back?
What a good question. We talked about presence a lot, and my husband was very present for me. And so that wasn't necessarily, that's kind of just who he is. But it meant a lot in that period, for sure. For sure. My husband also loves to cook. I'm very lucky. He is an excellent provider for us in so many ways, but he loves to cook and provide meals. So, it was, and also like laundry, like he was very much, like he's in general, like a 50-50 person in the house, being there with everything. But it was a lot. Like I had to lean on him a lot because I was in physical recovery. So I think the things that were kind of surprising that I needed more of was just like, the permission and space that like things are not going to be as they normally are in our house, of course. But B, just feeling like wholly and totally supported and having him be there for me, as simple as that sounds. And that could look different for everybody, but having him just, let me cry or let me talk or,
I love that. It's true.
Yeah. Whatever
it's
it
good.
is.
And thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Second last question, for the dad who's listening. There's going to be a lot of dads listening who are new dads, dads to be, or maybe, new dad, like another one on the way or another one on the way, whatever the situation is, who's listening. For the guy who's listening and feels a little bit disconnected from his wife and unsure actually how to help, what's one simple action he could take this week to begin rebuilding that connection? The reason why I ask is because we're super tactical here, and men are really practical. We like something we can take away. What's one action he can take this week to start rebuilding connection if he's in that kind of phase?
One practical step. If you know what love is and what she likes, if you know the love language that she speaks, you can start small. If she likes physical touch, you can just sit down and give her a foot rub and say, "Is this okay?
Yeah.
Would you like that? Would this feel okay to you?" I think starting small and having conversation or being present, I think, is really valuable, honestly. If you're looking for practical stuff, again, there's like a list of things, I think, in the guide that we have. But like, if you're not the person who normally does laundry, fold that laundry.
Figure it out.
Just do it.
Do it.
Yeah, seriously. And don't ask. Don't wait to be asked. Like, be proactive about it. I think that's a simple thing.
Just do it, and don't give her another thing to have to think about to ask you to do the thing. The whole point is for you to take a load off of her mind. So don't give her more things to give you to do. Just see if you see it, do it. Right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more thing that's really important for men. Learn what the signs of postpartum depression are.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to list them all out here, but like the high level is, the baby blues in that immediate couple of weeks are like really, really common. It's like just like part of the hormonal shift. But if it's lingering, if it's going on and on and on, it's been many weeks, like don't just let it spiral. And like I said, men can go through it too. And often if there's anything like predisposed genetically, like I've had lots of people come on the program and talk about this, like you're more like, if you have any kind of mental stuff happening before, it's a higher chance it's going to show up during this period. But men, you can learn what those signs are and learn about other birth complications beforehand so that you can spot them and be an advocate for your partner. Yeah. So there are things that are like mental mood disorder related you can look for. And also because this is so top of mind for me, because there's just been a lot of like announcements and breakthroughs on the topic of preeclampsia. If you don't know what that is, you can research that. Got an episode on my show about it. If you're a listener person, that's easier to learn by listening, where a doctor's coming on and talking about that. But the signs for preeclampsia are really easy to miss. So if you know what to look for, you could be potentially life-saving for your partner.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fantastic. A lot of great stuff you shared. Last question. Where can we find you on the interwebs? Because I know there's going to be a lot of people listening who want to get access to your resources, but maybe want to send their wives your way. So where can we find you? And how can we support you?
Of course. Thank you so much. Our website is fourthtrimesterpodcast.com. It's FOURTH spelled out, fourthtrimesterpodcast.com. We're on social media at the same handles, like Fourth Trimester Podcast, so you can check us out. And yeah, listen, let me know what you think. You can reach out to us directly through our website too if you want to contact us with anything specific.
Awesome. There you have it, friends. Sarah Trott from the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm going to have all your links in the show notes below. Listen, if you're listening to this and you have any questions, check out the website. There's tons of resources. Check out the podcast. Send it to your partner. Start listening to it together. Prepare for the season as a person who's gone through it. It's so important. Don't just try and figure it out on your own. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being on the show today. This has been a powerful conversation, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of your listeners who are taking the time to invest in themselves and invest in this information, because you are already 10 steps ahead. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you for tuning into the Dad Nation podcast today. Listen, if today's conversation challenged you, if it encouraged you or helped you level up in any area of your life, would you do me a favor? Take 60 seconds to rate and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. This helps us reach more men who need to hear this message. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Dad Nation YouTube channel, where you're going to find full episodes, clips, and exclusive content designed to help you win at home just like you do at work. All right, remember, your family does not need perfection. They need your presence. Your leadership matters. So keep showing up, keep leveling up, and never forget, when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. We'll see you next time.